I realized, by the way, that we talked a little bit about Brian McLaughlin's car, but I failed to give you the backstory of that earlier, which is simply that he nearly killed me with a heart attack at LAX airport when I got off of a 4-hour flight without Wi-Fi. I'll spare you the details. And then he also, I'm an LA Dodgers fan, and he painted my office San Francisco Giants colors. So you have to understand that the car thing was a proportional response, okay? But in any case, this is a blast today, and I'm looking forward to talking about this topic of... Yes?
Sorry, can you stand there for one second?
I'll hold still for you, Brian. Go for it.
Next time.
My wrist number is high, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about this topic of designing technology adoption and designing user adoption. And like I said, some of you work with networks of advisors, okay? And for some of you, the network of advisors, you work with a network of one and maybe a support person or two. And you're trying to figure out, when I think about technology, how do I drive that usage? And we think a lot about this because we have taken a lot of time and effort to try to design that kind of adoption and design that kind of usage across our products and across what we do. So I'm going to show you some examples of that, but ultimately I'm hoping that you can take away from this some really actionable steps that either you in your practice or you and your network of advisors can use to drive that adoption and drive that usage. I'm going to skip through the introduction because you already know who we are. But ultimately, the ease of use of technology is the primary driver of successful technology implementations. Okay, we've all seen technology implementations that fail and that don't work. If you want to see a great example of technology implementations that don't work, go to your local DMV office and watch how those technology implementations work. And that's ultimately the driver. It's one of the greatest predictors of whether or not technology is actually going to get used. Technology can be a great empowerer of advisors trying to figure out how to compete in a new world with new rules. It can be very powerful. But we have to actually use the technology, right? If this is what it looks like in our offices and we don't actually have technology systems running things, we probably can't even get to that computer that's underneath there. And ultimately, it's not actually going to empower the kinds of results and generate the kinds of results that we're looking for. So technology adoption is one of those things that you know it when you have it, okay? There's no definition, especially if you're thinking about it in your office, like have we adopted this, have we not? That's a fairly obvious thing. If you're talking about a broad network of advisors, I think it's the same kind of thing. You can tell when advisors are excited about using something and when it's actually being used. You know it when you have it. And every product, every solution that you roll out will have a natural adoption rate. Is it easy for the advisor to use? Is it the only way that this particular function can be done? That's a big driver, okay? Is it easy for the client to understand? If it's not easy for the client to understand, you see advisors creating, you've probably done this before, if you're trying to use some new technology, it's not working incredibly well, you find sort of a side route through the process to try to speed things up with the client in front of you. If it is not the only way to do a particular function, I'm thinking, for example, about like filling out forms or signing forms, right? E-signing forms is not the only way that you can get a form signed. We can also use the paper and pencil. We'll often create these side routes for ourselves. But at the end of the day, every product, every piece of technology that we put in place sort of has a natural adoption rate. We think that design is really the key to maximizing that adoption. So I'm going to give you 3 sort of things that we've learned along the way. And one of the primary things you might take away from this is looking at products through the lens of these 3 things, so that you can try to assess in advance, can I figure out how to get this technology to actually be used, both by me in my practice or, again, in the network of advisors that I serve. We think that principle number one is to design mobility into the process, okay? Now by mobility, I do not necessarily mean the smartphone, okay? I don't necessarily mean that everything has to be done on a phone. How many of us are super excited about filling in all of our client details for an institutional account opening form on our smartphone with that little screen, okay? So that's not what I'm talking about, but there are parts of the process. There are individual pieces of the process that work in different device contexts. So when I talk about mobility here, I mean mobility between different modes of operation, mobility between different contexts that the advisor is working in. I was just talking to one advisor at the break who has implemented the big screens in their office, right? They're trying to get everything off of paper and put things up on the big screen in their office. That's a great example of a context, right, that an advisor is working in. We have advisors, for example, who use the risk number approach, and I was saying earlier, beam the risk questionnaire to a client's iPhone, and they pop it open on their iPhone, and they do that one piece of the interaction on the smartphone. We see a lot of use of tablets, right? Because it's a computing device that is really easy to flip around and to hand to a client in that context. So when we talk about designing mobility, we try to think about the different contexts that an advisor is working in and choose the right kind of mobility between those contexts and those handoffs that make sense. That's something you want to look for, I think, in technology is, are we designing that ability to be mobile between these different contexts into that product and how that works. I've talked a little bit about our products, so I'm going to skip through some of these examples and move ahead. The second principle is about designing alignment with workflows, right? Because one of the things that we'll often see is that and it's fascinating to me to watch how people use technology. I fly a lot. I probably fly about 150 days a year. And one of the most fascinating things to me is watching all of the people who pull out their technology devices as soon as the plane reaches 10,000 feet, right? And the Wi-Fi clicks on. And what people were doing before then, it's like a fascinating little technology exposition on an airplane, right? Because they're using their phone when they're on the ground, and then you gotta shut the phones off. They close the door, right? So you gotta shut the phones off. So they switch to their iPads, and we all know they've still got their cellular connection on their iPads, right? But they've got their iPads going, and they're switching to that context and that whatever set of things that they're doing there, and then they get up above 10,000 feet, the Wi-Fi clicks on, and we all pull out our laptops. Some of these products, not only is that a changing context of mobility, right? But what's interesting to me is that how many times do we see where people are using Windows PCs and they're using iPhones or iPads earlier in the process? So what's interesting to me is that when people are using those kinds of products, they're jumping between different pieces of software and different trying to think of a good example here. You've got people who are opening up their email in Outlook on their PC, and they're trying to get a document open on their iPad, and they can't get it transferred across, right? They're trying or they were doing email on the iPad, and they're trying to open that document on the PC, and they just can't get the cloud to sync up in that way. And it's fascinating to me to watch people struggle and sort of box with the technology in that way. I think the challenge is that most products aren't designed for workflow alignment. They aren't designed to fit the workflows of the people who are using them. So there's a lot of these sort of clutches and crutches that we see in general productivity, but I think that's just magnified when we get into the advisory world because we have so much complexity in our businesses, right? We have all of these. I often like to say that trading platforms, for example, are like the cockpit of a 747 jet. There's 80,000 switches in the cockpit. That represents every stock and ETF and mutual fund that you can buy for your clients and all those other investment choices. There's all this complexity, and the complexity drives a lack of workflow alignment throughout these products. So, when you look at technology products and how they are designed, I think you're looking specifically for how these workflows flow together. I think it's really fascinating the work, for example, that Redtail is doing to drive workflows from CRM. I would say that's one of the biggest learnings that we've seen throughout this process of implementing technology with advisors, is that when they choose sort of a home base like their CRM to start to sort of track their workflows through and then jump off to other technology solutions, that is a much more seamless process than when they just have this hodgepodge of tasks that they're jumping back and forth between different technology products to do. So look for opportunities where the user interface drives that workflow and where the products can integrate together and help drive that workflow. That's been a big learning for us as well. The last piece is the idea of designing teaching moments into technology implementations. And this probably applies a little bit more to the I guess the folks who are working with networks of advisors, but it's also, for those of us running an individual practice, it's something to think about, that when we're thinking about new technology, change is difficult, and boy, one of the most challenging things that we've ever run up against and helped advisors jump over is the hurdle of inertia, right? This is how I've done my business for a long time. This is how I have done the process of opening accounts for a long time. And at the end of the day, we have to teach ourselves to change that process and to change those approaches and to have those teaching moments in our technology implementation. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I'm going to just show you a little bit about our autopilot platform. This is the digital advice platform that really empowers advisors to implement that digital advice business model, sort of the H&R Block business model that I was talking about earlier, right? So this is the kind, an advisor can drop a few lines of code to their website. Sometimes this is client-driven. A lot of times it's advisor-assisted. Again, the idea behind this product is not to help an advisor photocopy a robo-advisor's business model, but to help an advisor execute that H&R Block business model, that digital advice business model of being advisor-assisted. So on the advisor's website, you can imagine instead of that gray background, that's actually the advisor's website, right? So this pops up inside of the advisor's website in that context. The investor maybe clicks learn how to get invested right, or what is my risk number, or how can I save for retirement? And they start going through this process. They're going to capture their risk number. They're going to sync in their outside assets. They're going to discover that they're invested wrong. That happens about 80 to 90% of the time. And then they're going to use a handful of very simple variables to determine the right investment plan for that. Both, whether they're investing for retirement, whether they're investing for cash, their portfolio choice, how much they want to save, when they need the money, those kinds of things. By the way, interesting learning from this process, millennials in particular do not care about retirement. Note that I did not say that they should not care about retirement. I just said that they did not care about retirement, okay? So all of the clients that you're going to be talking with over the next 10 years who are on the younger end are coming in, and their goal, if you see at the top there it says, what is your goal, retirement or cash? They click on cash, okay? Why? Because they're interested in having a lump sum of money available by X time in order to start a business or have a down payment for a house or something along those lines. So it's not necessarily wrong, it's what is right for them, but that is their focus, and it's very interesting how that generational change exists. They're not thinking about retirement and until, frankly, a long time. And that's one of the things that we can do as advisors, is to teach them the right way to think about that. That's part of your value, and guess what? Wealth Friend and Betterment can't change how an investor thinks. So that's your advantage and your opportunity to show value to them. So they figure out how they want to get invested right in this process, right? They go through a really beautiful, intuitive account opening process, figure out how to fund their account, e-sign 100% pre-filled documents. Very simple, very seamless process to bring clients on board. Very digital, very automated, and like I said, human-driven but advisor-assisted. Or I'm sorry, human-driven but technology-assisted, okay? The ultimate learning from all of this is this. I've heard so many times from people that oh gosh, well, I'll put it this way, the industry sort of started just sort of burying our heads in the sand and saying, oh, robo-advisors are not going to impact our business, right? They're not going to have any impact, we're not going to worry about them, they're serving a different kind of client. Somewhere along the way, we sort of flipped the pendulum all the way to the other side and we said, we need to Xerox copy their business model, and we need to execute that, right? And, if I could just say, we are never going to be able to out-robo the robo-advisors, okay? In the quest to depersonalize financial services, I think the guys with millions of dollars in venture capital are going to win, right? So, better than, think about it, they've perfected how to spend $600 to acquire $63 in new annual revenue. And the VCs are actually telling them to scale that up, and they're giving them more money. We're just in the race to depersonalize our services. The guys with VC money are going to win. What we need to do instead is use technology to maximize our advantages, right? To deploy this kind of digital advice model. And the learning here that's really tough is how we can segment our business to be able to serve that next generation of clients. And this is tough for advisors. I gotta tell you, I get a lot of initial pushback from advisors going, I can't offer some kind of, now this is very hypothetical what I've put up on the screen here, but they go, I can't offer two different tiers of service to my clients. That will totally cannibalize my existing business with my clients right now, okay? I charge my clients 1%, and my minimum is $500,000, or whatever it is, and I don't see how I don't know how my office staff can handle multiple tiers of clients. Well, we better figure this out as an industry, because it's changing. And we're going to need to figure out how to deploy this kind of digital advice model if we're going to thrive in the future. And this is what clients are looking for. This is, again, just a really hypothetical example. Every advisor sort of has this full-service business model with some kind of minimum, right? There's probably a broad range of minimums in the room. The opportunity that some technology like autopilot gives an advisor is to drive down their cost by driving down their complexity. Autopilot, for example, gives advisors a fixed cost of 25 basis points at a $5,000 minimum account size, where most advisors are telling us that they spend 50 or 60 of their 100 basis points trying to do things like design portfolios, trade portfolios, rebalance portfolios, and handle all of those really time-sucking manual processes like complicated 401k rollovers, like liquidate withdrawal money, all of those kinds of phone calls and issues with clients. Autopilot sort of automates all of that, allows you to put the hassles of your business on autopilot so you can focus on those client relationships yet again. And so my point with that is that it empowers advisors to create this second tier, okay? And that's a real learning for a lot of advisors, how to actually change their business model. And I think that, the way that we're seeing this implemented, by the way, very successfully is we're watching advisors for their online tier, they hold a single conference call for all of their online clients once a quarter. They use a lot of the marketing and content strategies that Bill Winterberg was talking about, and they send out monthly email newsletters to all of those clients. And they are, some of them, it's sort of interesting, you know that in this hypothetical example, there's a lower fee for the lower tier of service. We've seen some advisors implement it that way. They say, look, you don't need financial planning or tax assistance until you reach my minimum, okay? Then the fee is going to go up, but the level of services are going to go up as well. There are other advisors we've seen who charge more for the online tier, even with a reduced level of service. Because there's obvious economies of scale, and there's a great argument you can make to clients there. There's going to be a variety of different service tiers and service models that are invented. And it's been a big learning event, I think, for a lot of firms as a part of adopting technology to think through reshaping how their business model works. So regardless of how this ends up working for you, know that in every piece of technology that you start to implement, there are learning moments built into that technology that are going to change and reshape how you think about your practice, from your business model to your pricing to your operational model. How do you answer the phone differently for online clients, right? How do you answer the phone differently for full service clients? So at the end of the day, we think design is the difference between failure and success in technology implementation. That has been our experience, and I think our success in helping advisors actually implement this technology successfully. I hope that was interesting. I hope that you got some insights out of that you can apply to the choice of technology across the industry. Thanks so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you in some of the breakout sessions later today.